I was at this like little local art show, and this person was selling this little painting and had a monster on it. And I said, "Oh, what's the monster?" And she said, "This is the ghost of things left unsaid." And I was like, holy, it was like perfect timing. I bought the painting, put it up in my bedroom, and it's like this crazy ghost or whatever monster thing. And it's up in our bedroom, still up to this day. And it's a reminder of the ghost of things left unsaid. And the power of just communicating.
The water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secret.
Bryan, welcome to our show. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Really excited about this. I've watched and listened to all of your episodes.
He's our biggest fan.
Biggest fan, absolutely.
Bryan was a part of the reason some of you noticed we were in Jamaica a few weeks ago recording our podcast. And he had an amazing wedding, and we're here to talk about his journey as an entrepreneur, a business, a family person, and a human being. I'd love to rewind the time back a bit. Where were you born?
I was born in northern Minnesota.
And where are your parents from?
My mom is Filipino, and my dad is Finnish, although he was born in the U.S.
Were either of them entrepreneurs?
So my dad ran his own insurance, single solo insurance brokerage under State Farm Insurance. So I think he liked working on his own and setting his own hours and stuff like that, but he wasn't like, I don't know what that counts as, but yes, I think so.
My dad was also an entrepreneur, and people are always like, oh, you're always going to be an entrepreneur too. And for most of my life, like, whatever, that's not true. Do you think that there's value to that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think that looking back on it, I had a lot of entrepreneurial tendencies. My brother, who is probably smarter than me, just went straight engineering like my dad and is like very successful doing what he does and would probably never have any desire to go in an entrepreneurial way. So it definitely has some sort of personality thing. And so my dad was the dad of both of us. And so I don't know how much he had that influence was on me other than nature and nurture.
At what point do you remember ever being interested in being an entrepreneur?
Well, I always liked being in charge. And so
what do you mean?
I always wanted to be in control of my own destiny and what I do and everything. And when I was really young, I was selling shoes, mason shoes out of catalogs. And I started a grass cutting business where I had a buddy of mine that was doing most of the labor and I was doing the marketing and everything. I helped, and then even just, my dad had a saying, it's better to be on stage than in the audience. And so being the person that's orchestrating everything and running everything was always my personality as well. So yeah, I think that being in charge is what I like doing. And when you're an entrepreneur, you get to be in charge.
What did you mean by that? Being on stage is better than being an audience?
I think that whenever we went somewhere and they asked for a volunteer, like my family, me, my brother, my dad, were always like, we'll do it. Because it's always more fun to be on the stage than, like, why would you want to watch the people do the stuff, the fun stuff, when you could be up there doing it? We always enjoyed that. And it has to do with even in class raising your hand. And I don't know. It's
the number. I want to remind you, the number one fear people have is public speaking. And so I can definitely imagine why 99% of the people wouldn't want to be on stage. So I just want to
I'm not going to say definitely nervous and nerve-wracking and probably times. My teacher once told me, I'm going all over the place, so I apologize. But my teacher once told me that, boy, your son's got a problem. He always just raises his hand. Somebody doesn't even know the answer. He raises his hand. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm not going to tell him to stop raising his hand, even if he doesn't know the answer. Yeah, I think breaking through that nervousness and that fear is exciting and exhilarating. And I like doing that.
How old were you when you did the shoes business with your friend?
I was like 12. And just like every one of those types of businesses, the only person I sold to was like my friends of my family. Like, it was stupid. But
how did you recruit another person at 12 years old to do the work?
That was the handyman and grass cutting business, and he was my best friend, and I think he was just along for the ride and the adventure as well. And we had 6 clients or whatever.
That's awesome. All right, so then fast forward, what was the third business?
The third business, I don't know if I didn't have like real businesses beyond that. I just worked a whole bunch of different stuff. I was never afraid to work. I was a window washer or a lawn cutter. I worked on a line crew. I worked as a mover in New York City. I was a dishwasher in a Chinese restaurant for a week. I did a million different jobs. My wife always jokes that we're doing something and she'll be like, oh, how did you know? It's like, I used to do that for a living. There's all these like different stupid jobs that I did. I never had a problem working. I always had a desire to start a business, and I just didn't know what to do or how to do it, I think. And so I was a civil engineer, went to school for engineering, and then you get an internship and you just follow down the path. You get an internship, you go to a...
Why'd you go with civil engineering? It sounds like you had this entrepreneurial mindset and being a public speaker. I'd imagine you like being into movies and trying to be a theater. How did you end up going with civil engineering?
Well, you're from northern Minnesota and your dad's an engineer, and that's just what you do. I remember telling the school counselor that I want to go out east for college, and then being like, you sure you want to do that? It's all the way out there. Why would you want to go? Why would you want to do that? And really dissuading me a little bit, I think. But to my parents' credit, they're always like, go, you should do as much as big a thing as you can. And at that time, the only path I could envision was being an engineer, joining a company, becoming a partner, part owner, blah, blah, blah. And I did that. I was really good at what I did. I was like, selfishly or trying not to brag, I think I was maybe the best engineer in the company, and certainly was the best drafter before I was the best engineer. And even when I was really early in my career, I ended up being asked if I wanted to be a partner, and I had a tiny little partnership. And then I saw behind the scenes about like how crappy the business was being run. And I actually went into the owner and I was like, oh, you got to change this. We're spending way too much money here. He was like spending money like he had a $50 million business, and he really only had a $5 million business or something like that. And like made a stand. You got to change this right or I'm leaving. Because I thought I was the best. And he's like, guess you'll see you. And so I walked back to my office, start packing up my stuff. And people are like, what's going on? I was like, I quit. And I got another job at another place. This person said, oh, if you do great, I'm going to let you, he was a startup basically. And I said, I'll let you become a partner. And so I did great. The first year, we had basically the same, I grew the business to have basically the same amount of business he had brought in already. Had another great year. And then after the second year, I was like, hey, what's going on? I thought I was going to be a partner in this. And he's like, oh, we're not ready there and just not ready for it. And I was like, this sucks. So then I worked in Philadelphia, kind of the same kind of thing. It was like, I was like assuming I had to climb that corporate path to ownership or partner and then ownership and own an engineering firm. And I just wasn't able to figure out how to do that. And I was reading these Rich Dad, Poor Dad and 4-Hour Workweek and all those classic entrepreneurial novels about becoming an entrepreneur. And finally I was like, well, I got to do something else. I think it was before really like people doing freelance stuff, because this was in 2008 and stuff like that.
So what made you take the plunge?
I was looking on Facebook and I saw a post from a cousin of mine in the Philippines who's a civil engineer of a project he was working on a gas station. And I was like, holy crap, that's great work. It looks like the Exxon station I did in Monmouth County, New Jersey. And I said, hey, if I get you work, would you be interested in doing that? And he said yes. I don't think he knew what he was getting into, but he said yes. And so I put up a website, and almost immediately I started getting work. And so I said, hey, you better hire people. And he hired people. And next thing you know, we had a business going.
How'd you get the first couple clients?
It was really just SEO and having really cheap prices and competing against Indian firms that were also cheap but couldn't communicate as well as I did and wasn't able to, I guess, sell their services as well as I did.
So your first clients didn't know you at all? They
Didn't
were just
know me
cold
at all.
from, wow,
Didn't
that's
know me at
impressive.
all. Yeah. I went online, I saw that Indian firms are basically selling drafting at about $6 an hour, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do $7 an hour. And yeah, we started getting work pretty quickly. I had my regular job I didn't make any personal income probably for the first year or so, but I was getting work for my cousin and then eventually the people he hired. And then we started getting some word of mouth and some bigger clients. And eventually this client out of central New Jersey said, hey, I've got 1,000 cell towers for you to do across from Ohio across to New Jersey. This was the T-Mobile expansion.
Wow.
And I was like, there's no way I can do this while I'm working 50 hours a week as a civil engineer in Philadelphia. And I had to decide whether or not to quit the job and take on that project or not. And I called up a buddy of mine that I talked to for a lot of things, and he's like, if you believe in the company, this is your moment. You got to quit, and you got to go for it. And so that's what I did. I went in and I told my boss, I was like, that side thing I'm doing? And he's like, yeah. It's actually moving, and I'm gonna have to quit. And he's like, can you give me it? And I was like, can you give me a month or something? And I was like, how about 6 days? And so, because they wanted to start this project a week from now. I felt bad about that, but I just dove right into it and was going back and forth with the clients and growing the team and trying to get the quality up and really fighting through it, but it worked out. And telecom ended up being a really big niche and still is a really big niche for CAD.
Wasn't there a hack where you would find people's email addresses that are starting a new building? Was that, or you guys do that or not?
We had a hack going for quite a while where we had a robot that was scanning Craigslist, and anyone that posted on Craigslist that they were looking to hire a CAD drafter, we would shoot them an email back, hey, we've got CAD drafters for you. Can we help you out? It turned out like those were terrible leads because it's somebody that wants to drop a deck, or it's somebody that just wants to hire somebody for this little project, or I think Craigslist has gotten worse in reputation now, or at least it's forgotten about now. But even at that time, I think people weren't, if you wanted to hire like legit big work, you weren't really going on Craigslist. And so it took us a while to figure it out, but there were pretty bad leads. And then Craigslist caught on to the robot that we were doing, so it wasn't working anymore. And it broke finally, and we moved on to something else. I've tried everything as far as marketing. You do everything for a little bit, and it works for a little bit, and then it peters out, and then you quit it, and you try something else.
Love it. That business evolved, you grew it, and then you eventually started another one.
Right. Yeah. In about 2018. So I started CAD sourcing in 2011 and growing, but hitting kind of a plateau. And I had to have kind of a reflection about like, where is this business going? What is the possibilities here? And what are the challenges that I have? And I realized that there had to be some sort of pivot here, something that I had to do. And I thought about it, and I realized that the executive team and the back-end support that I had built in the Philippines to manage a 50, 60 person engineering outsourcing business was just as valuable as the engineers that I had. And I started this time talking to my network about like people, hey, I could maybe help set up an office. And this one person came to me and said, yeah, I'd to set up an office in the Philippines. And so we did and continue to do all the recruiting and the HR, the payroll, and the IT and legal support to put together these offices, a wide variety of clients now, not just engineering and architecture. And that's really exploded as COVID has happened and this quiet quitting, even if that's a real thing or not, I don't know. But just the difficulties of hiring people in the U.S. and salaries going up and inflation and really the strength of the dollar, all that global stuff has created headwinds for my business Tahche that does staff leasing for U.S. clients in the Philippines. It's really the area of growth that I'm really excited about in the future.
What are some misnomers or misconceptions that people have about staffing, let's say outside the U.S. and specifically in the Philippines?
I think that the obvious, subtly racist misnomers about quality and culture and how employees work and communicate are all still very true, or are still very valid and present. But people are really starting to understand that there's a reason why Apple builds all their phones in China, and beyond that, why these big four accounting firms have offices all over the world, and why these huge tech companies have all these offices all over the world. It's because you can get great talent globally to work in your companies. And as people get more and more comfortable with remote workforce and global talent, the skill levels of these people in other countries are becoming more apparent. And it's the comfort level of Americans working with a global workforce that is changing. The global workforce has always been there. The comfort level of Americans working with them is changing. And as a result, we're seeing a lot more demand for our services, and frankly, seeing a lot more competition prop up as all these people are like, holy cow, there's great talent in the Philippines. Let's start up a company connecting those people to the U.S. But I've been doing outsourcing out of the Philippines since 2010, so I welcome the competition because it hopefully means that there's an opportunity there.
So do you think that will continue? I was just reading that even Snapchat brought their employees back this week for 4 days a week or so, and it almost seems right now like we're having a knee-jerk reaction back.
Pendulum's going back, yeah.
Right. To be clear, I'm a huge fan of working in the office. All of my team works in the office. I'm not a huge believer that you can be innovative and grow quickly and have the collaboration and the team mindset with a fully remote team. I just don't think it's possible. And so the question is, where can you build that team in an office that's going to have all of those kind of like unknown pluses that you can't quantify? Where are you going to be able to build that team? And are you going to want to try and build that team in San Francisco or New York, or maybe in Cebu, Philippines? And so the question then is, what's the talent that you're going to be able to find, and what's the cost of that talent, and what's the cost of overhead and the office space? And if you're looking at a even playing field for those types of situations, there's a lot of instances, I think, where putting a team in the Philippines or a number of other places gets to be a difficult decision. And I think, and a lot of times, the Philippines will be the right choice.
There's certain professions, like I know some of the largest, most profitable businesses in healthcare are nurses placed from the Philippines, although often they actually bring them over to the U.S. in a hospital in Tennessee.
Sure.
And charge, $150K a year and pay the person $30K a year, some
Right,
crazy
right.
margins. Are there some professions that you think work well for what you just described?
Yeah. Quick aside on Filipinos, the nursing. Everyone knows seemingly half the Filipinos or half the nurses in a hospital are Filipinos. But if you watch on all these hospital shows on TV, you never see a Filipino nurse. So I don't know what's going on.
Why is that?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, acting must not be one of the professions.
I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I think that there's certainly some professions that either just the way the profession has grown or the industry or the way the workflow is done, that having them be remote and individual people makes perfect sense. And that's just the way it may continue to flow. But then if you have a team where they need to actually collaborate and communicate and can enjoy the benefits of having morning huddle and looking over the shoulder of the employee, or even very close-knit training between a manager and a junior employee, all of those situations are likely going to be better off done in an office. And in a lot of times, that office is better off located in the Philippines.
So you don't think there's certain professions? Do you think software engineering is one where the Philippines has untapped potential?
I think that there's certain leading edge technologies in software development, and I'm not a software developer, so I don't know, bells and whistles. I have no idea what they do, but there's certain instances where they're really leading the charge in the industry, and maybe the cream of the crop is here in the U.S. And who am I to argue with that? But probably if you go down from that top 1%, from 2% down to 0, 100, whatever scale we're using, there's probably plenty of people, not only in the Philippines, but also in India and other countries that can compete very significantly with you.
How do you manage? You run two businesses, you have children, you have a new wife. How do you manage all this and across multiple time zones, right? A lot of the Philippine team is not. Do they work East Coast hours? But that's a separate question. Really,
Sure.
The question is, how do you personally manage that?
I've been very lucky to build an amazing team in the Philippines. I've got a general manager that was leading teams for Merck and GlaxoSmithKline and other pharmaceutical companies in the Philippines. I have a controller that was high up in the accounting departments of San Miguel Foods, the largest corporation in the Philippines. I have other executives that have worked in executive roles for very prominent companies in the Philippines or U.S. corporations that have offices in the Philippines. And so I'm lucky to have built a team, or my plan was to build a team that that was smarter than me in their individual roles. And a lot of what I do is make the 50-50 decisions on which way we're going to head for the company. But the day-to-day stuff, I really let my team handle that. And I think that they can probably make better decisions than I can on a daily basis on that kind of stuff. But the big decisions on which direction that the company's going, those are the things that I have to do for the benefit of the company, seeing the whole company as a whole, as opposed to maybe just what the accounting department's concerned about or the IT department's concerned about or anything. My team works very much a flex schedule. So, I'm working a New York hours schedule for the most part, and we coordinate so that our weekly meetings, they're convenient for me, fortunately. But it's
one of those benefits of being in charge.
There's benefits of being on the stage.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. I like setting the rules, but
breaking the rules.
They're my rules to break. Yeah.
I had a few more questions. One is, you always seem like a very happy person, like happier than the average. So I'm wondering, why is that? How are you happy? I've never seen you not at 11.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I'm a very lucky guy. I'm just, fates are always working in my favor, and I think that I've recognized that luck. And so, like, how can I not be happy? And I'm surrounded by amazing people, a wife that's amazing, kids that are amazing. There's certainly things that stress me at times, but when I've learned what is the downside of these individual situations and problems, I know that my family and those close to me are still going to be there. And I'm really energized by just living. Life is great. We should all enjoy it. I got a really good buddy that says, life's great, just let it be. Just let it be great. And so many people get in the way of life being great. Like you're in charge of your own life. You decide if you're happy or not. You decide if you're at an 11 or if you're at a 4. And I choose an 11.
So are there any particular habits or things you do to remind you of that?
I try to recognize all the good stuff that happens to me. And my wife will tell you that I'm constantly saying, isn't this amazing? Just, even if you're in a restaurant, isn't this just the best? Look at this place. Or like a sunset. I love sunsets. I'm always like, look at this sunset. Just gorgeous. Let's look at it. And she probably like, yeah, it's another sunset. But I don't know. We were in Hawaii for a wedding a few weeks ago. And I was like, every day was a rainbow. I was like, holy crap, there's another rainbow over there. Look at that. There's rainbows all the time in Hawaii.
It's a beautiful place. What would you say are your personal core values?
Really, I think my core values I'd like to think, evolved, yes, but more have matured, maybe is the right word. But I really try to be very honest with people. I think that honesty is so important so that people know where you stand. And if we can be honest with each other, then great. That's awesome. And so I try to be honest with everyone. Communication, I really try and communicate well with people. I try to help others as much as I can. And I gain so much joy from helping others. I started the company. Truly, if I had started the company and all I did was get projects for my cousins, some family members, and they were able to reap some benefits from that and have a better life in the Philippines, I would have considered that a success. I grew up seeing my mom send $100 a month to the Philippines to help them with college education and stuff like that. I truly just started the company just trying to help them, and then it turned into helping the families of the employees we have, and now we have 350 families or 350 employees that work with us. And I take such pride in the help that we're providing the families. And so I think helping others is really good for the soul and good for you. So I try to have that as a core value. And yeah, I think those have solidified as things that I try to think about.
You mentioned communication being one of them. What does that mean to you, being a good communicator?
Hopefully Dolores never listens to this, or I don't know. A while back, we've been together now for 7 years, and early on, or relatively early on, maybe not there, I don't know, a few years in, we were having a fight. And just like a lot of fights, it broke down to communication, and we weren't communicating. And I was at this like little local art show, and this person was selling this little painting and had a monster on it. And I said, oh, what's the monster? And she said, this is the ghost of things left unsaid. And I was like, holy, it was like perfect timing. I bought the painting, put it up in my bedroom. And it's like this crazy ghost or whatever monster thing, and it's up in our bedroom, still up to this day. And it's a reminder of the ghost of things left unsaid, and the power of just communicating honestly, but communicating with others, not only with your spouse, but your kids and really your employees and your clients, and just how that is a superpower that a lot of people don't lean into. The ability to communicate in an honest way with empathy, I think, is a superpower that people are really, in this age of communication and all this information out there, some people are not communicating honestly and with empathy, and I think that's a superpower that people don't lean into.
Interesting. If I can push back a little bit against
Please.
that, I'm wondering, especially in an argument or in a passion, I was reading something about how you can't unsay certain things, and that communicating in those situations actually is a bad idea. Maybe it needs a break. I'm just wondering, how do you win?
I think that, I can only say things from my own perspective. One thing I learned about, and this is a long time ago, so I don't remember where it came from. It was like, whenever you're having a fight or an argument, if we're talking about spouses specifically, it's like I always start with "I love you" and lay out the good stuff, and then like talk about the whole, what is that sandwich thing? Yeah, but I think there's something true to that, and it has to do with like maybe slowing down and the heat of the argument, saying something I could have never imagined myself saying in the heat of an argument. Oh, you're the worst, or you do this terrible, or whatever, and lying. A lot of times those are lies. Right. Like you're trying to up the scale, or you're trying to bring them down, or whatever. That's not communicating in an honest and empathetic way. It's not about blurting out everything. It's about trying to communicate with empathy and understanding at the same time.
Got it. Any other questions?
Yeah. What? Maybe not what are you surprised by, but if you were starting a business, let's rewind, pretend 15 years ago, you were starting a new business. You had no connections. You were at the beginning, right? Where you didn't have a network. You didn't have any of that. But what you did have access to was the resources of today in the Philippines. So you had access to this ability to the talent and kind of the knowledge that you have today around that talent and that maybe that untapped potential there. What is a business that you would start today using maybe some of those resources you have in the Philippines?
I think that one thing I've leaned in on is my relationship with the Philippines and my family first and foremost in the Philippines, but just my relationship in the Philippines. And now that we go back and forth all the time, I'm building a house in the Philippines. My understanding of the people and culture in the Philippines gives me an advantage in the business world when dealing with the U.S. market. And so leaning into opportunities where I have that advantage I should be doing that. I shouldn't be trying to play Bitcoin or whatever, like where I have no idea what's going on. You don't know, who knows what's doing anything. But so I'm trying to think of an answer. I don't have a specific instance, but there's lots of opportunities where you see something that's trying to be done in the U.S. and you're like, if I did that in the Philippines and I was able to ramp up the volume of people that are doing it, ramp up the quality of the way it's being done, because I'm going to have it done instead of one person working 60 hours a week, and I'm going to have two people working 40 hours a week, and now we're going to spend an extra 10 hours on quality control because we can do all that stuff. And I can do it in a better, faster, more efficient manner in the Philippines. Is there margin then that I can then succeed in a business with? And I think there's a lot of things that's possible. And as the market changes or the culture changes around what's possible to be done in the Philippines and what's possible to be done with computers and AI potentially and the metaverse, who knows, what's potentially can be done in the Philippines, I say the Philippines because that's what I'm most comfortable with globally, is going to have an inherent advantage that there's a potential for a business there. I saw a thing where there's these fast food restaurants or Quick Marks or something like that, they were having the cashier person, I think it was in the Philippines, but maybe it was India, and you would walk up, the screen would pop up and be like, hey, and the person would talk to you and take your order, and it'd go in the back, and they were friendly and knew all the questions and knew the menu and everything else. And who knows whether or not that'll succeed. I think that there's a decent chance that could succeed. But there's a million different things, I think, like that, where you're like, could this be done in the Philippines? And could it be done better, more efficiently, at higher quality, at a lower cost? And if you can answer that question with a yes, you might have a business there.
So there was a really good NPR episode about, or maybe it was Planet Money, where they went to Canada. Yeah, maybe I saw it because you posted it. But I listened to it, and it was very interesting. And they talked with the cashier or the person on the other side. And in Canada, where that particular story, I think it was in Toronto, took place, there's been some pushback, right? That from people who live there, who used to have those $18 an hour jobs and now don't. And how do you feel, as comfortable as you are in answering that, or as far as you want to go with that, what would you tell that person that used to have that job that now is in the Philippines?
Well, I think the globe evolves, right? And so there was a time when an older generation went to do all these blue collar factory jobs and stuff like that. And at some point, the American public said, hey, you know what? We'd rather not spend all this money that we're spending on this stuff. We want it done in China, and we want that product for less. And the society decided that. And the economy of the U.S. shifted from that to what we have now, which is very much a service economy, instead of a manufacturing economy in many ways. And there's certainly anytime there's a global shift or even a countrywide shift, there's some winners and some losers, but generally speaking, there's been a lot more winners than losers. And I think we're in the middle of a shift again, as certain service industry jobs that we felt like could only be done here locally in the U.S. are now going to end up being done globally. And so there's going to be a shift that's happening, and it's happening rapidly. It's really happening really fast right now. And it's going to shake out that certain service sector jobs that were done here in the U.S. are now going to be done globally. And it's going to be done because the public demands better service. They demand lower prices. The public demands it. The public drives all this. Nobody's making anyone do anything, just like that store in Toronto. The public will demand it, just like they demanded cheaper products. They're going to want cheaper services. They want hopefully better services. Right now, originally there was complaints about the products that were created or made in Japan and China and elsewhere. And now, I think a lot of people would say that the quality of the products, the iPhones that come out of China, are better than anything that could be built else for whatever warts and reasons around that. I think so. Manufacturing, they figured out, right? And I would never want to do a manufacturing facility in the Philippines because they know how to do it over in China. They know how to do that. But I think we can do a service industry in the Philippines, and I think we can do an amazing job at that. And we'll see where it goes.
We'll see.
Last question from me is, do you think being a father makes you more efficient?
Yes.
Like in your business and in general?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All of a sudden you take 4, 5, 6 hours out of the day and you say, we're dedicating that to another human being that wasn't around before. And you got to figure out how to do the other stuff in that time that's left. And so you end up maybe cutting out. I used to be a huge football fan. I don't watch much football at all. You certainly cut other things out. You just become more efficient on what you got to do there. And you only have so many hours in the day. And I think that in becoming more efficient with your time, you're tightening up even the smaller things that you do to try and be more efficient with that. So it's out of necessity. When you're young, you know this, you have a kid now. When you're young, you got all kinds of time. You could farting around all week and you still get your work done.
Well, this is what I'm wondering, because it seems like you're still living that life while still having a family and 2 businesses. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how do you divide yours where you're able to go on these trips but also manage these businesses? But then also, I think more importantly, feel that the family people have time with you and that you don't feel guilty about not being there. How do you do it?
Yeah, me and my wife and the kids, we make decisions that really are leveraged towards trying to do the best that we can with the time that we have every moment of the day. And that doesn't mean that we always have to be like doing a party or whatever. It might just be, hey, we're watching a movie together, but trying to be present. And that's the best thing we want to do at that time. But I think there's a lot of people that, hey, 3 weeks from now, we got an open weekend. What are we going to do? And if you don't think about it, you don't do anything, and all of a sudden the weekend comes and you're like, I got nothing to do. I don't know. We're going to whatever. I don't know. But if you're like 3 weeks from now, we got nothing to do. You know what? Let's go down to Miami for the weekend or something like that. You can make it happen. It takes a little bit of planning. These things just don't happen. as I tell my wife all the time. And she jokingly tells me back, just like, these things just don't happen. It takes a little bit of planning. Luckily, I have a personal team in the Philippines that helps me with my calendar and travel. And travel takes a lot of effort and stuff like that. And making sure that my calendar is blocked out in a way that is most efficient, but not packed so that you're feeling stressed about things, and spreading things out accordingly. And I think that way I'm able to glean the most out of life, which is what I'm trying to do.
Well,
Love it.
On that note, thank you for making the time to come on our show.
This is the greatest thing I could have been possibly doing right now. I love it.
Thank you so much, Bryan.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flaviu. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down.